Hey folks, let me know if you can hear me. Let me know what it do. All the things. Hey. Like this is doing a lot of focusing and refocusing, which will be really annoying during the live stream. So turn that piece off. Good, we can hear me. All right, guys, say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know we're, living our best lives. We're gonna start in just a minute. Gonna pop out chat. Whoa. Okay. All right, guys. Today we're doing 7.2. So if there's anything you're confused about or having trouble remembering about, go ahead. Moses, that's really cool that your picture has sunglasses. Erica, I take personal offense to the Longhorn finger sign emoji that you posted. Deeply personally offended. Still waiting on our arrivals. Anything that you guys want to learn about or not learn about? I know you guys want to review for the test. Let me know though if there's anything specifically that you want to be sure that I hit on. Comment down below. I think I must just be a really good teacher because you guys aren't saying anything. But also it could be because this is frozen. No, it's not. Okay. The New Deal programs, constitutional amendments, key laws and people. Transcendentalism still confuses me to this day. It confuses a lot of people, Sabrina. You are not alone. All right. Christina, we can do like kind of a lot of things, but like also the court thing, like the court packing. Is that what you're talking about, Erica? Okay. P.S. I am in the journalism room and I am using Miss Barry's. The word I'm looking for is hovercam.
But she doesn't know how to use it.
Because mine is in my classroom, and I didn't want to go back up and get it, so she's letting me use hers. Thanks, Miss Berry. Can we go over key unions and the programs? Home front, both World War I, World War II. Yes, all the things. Okay, so review for 7.2. And guys, remember that the goal is that you're not just watching the live stream, you're taking notes along with me. Otherwise, I could just be talking to your face. Text your friends, let them know the live stream is happening. Just had someone message me and ask me how they watch the live stream. On my YouTube channel, folks. Live with Aggie Puckett. Word. Okay. So let's start off with kind of timeline for the things. So our last unit kind of ended with 1919 and the Treaty of Versailles, which, remember, the U.S. never ratifies, and we don't join the League of Nations, even though Our president came up with it. We still don't join it. It's a whole thing. Maybe we do this one. Christina, at the end, if there's time, we'll do it. We'll do a period 4 review, and I'll touch base with you guys on a few of those items. Okay. Kind of waiting for this to not be terrible because the focus is real bad. Maybe it'll get better. Does it get better? Yikes. Okay, hold on, folks. Why does it focus on the wrong? There we go. That's better. Okay. So we have the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. And this is when Wilson is president. And then remember, he has like a stroke because 1919 was a big mood. He has a stroke. And then after Wilson, we go into the 1920s. And we have Harding, who is like the return to normalcy guy. Then we have Cal Coolidge, good old Silent Cal. And after them, we have Herbert Hoover. And then FDR is our president for more than a decade. So there's that. So essentially, we got Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, all these fellows. So Harding is beginning. We start the 1920s with him, and he's all about the return to normalcy, which is kind of like deregulation. His focus is deregulation. But then we move into, along with that is all of the scandal. Harding's presidency is riddled with scandal. Lots of problems kind of going on during his presidency. Lots of not so great situations happening, specifically the Teapot Dome scandal, wherein essentially a member of his cabinet sells federal land to a private company and then pockets the cash. This is like a moment of disillusionment for the American people because prior to this, they didn't really even realize that presidents could be corrupt because presidents were seen and politicians were generally seen as very like esteemed, that they were seen as very esteemed by the public. And this kind of causes people to lose that. Well, after Harding, we have President Coolidge. Coolidge becomes president, and he's nicknamed Silent Cal. He is the guy who, when asked at press conferences by the press, can we get your opinion on the economy? His response would be, no. They'd ask him about, like, can we get your opinion on this? And he'd say, no. And at the very end, and he would just respond no to everything. At the very end of the press conference, he'd say, and don't quote me on any of that. So Silent Cal Coolidge believed that in order to kind of, even though he had some scandals in his presidency too, people didn't know about it because he didn't talk about it. And so his belief is like that whatever you don't say, they can't hold against you, which is like a really weird phrasing of it, but essentially that's what it is. He also kind of continues like deregulation. And his presidency is fairly similar to Harding. Harding is a Republican. Coolidge is a Republican. And then Herbert Hoover becomes president. Herbert Hoover becomes president, and he is also a Republican. And he honestly believes like he's going to ride this wave of the Roaring 20s because we got 20 to 24, 24 to 28, and then Herbert Hoover becomes president. At least I think. Okay, I may be wrong, so let me double check. I think Coolidge is a Republican, but I could be wrong. He could be a Democrat, but I'm pretty sure he and Harding were. Okay, let me see. Sorry, guys. Sometimes it's the evening and I'm tired and things. Oh, I think Harding dies in office. Oh yeah, Harding dies in office, and then Cal Coolidge has to take over. Coolidge is president from 23 to 29. Harding dies. Cal Coolidge is president, and then Herbert Hoover takes over after the 28 election. And then when Herbert Hoover takes over, like just a few months later, we have the Great Depression. And remember, this is where we get things like, I'm use blue for sadness because, things. We have Hoovervilles, which were like shanty towns. A newspaper was a Hoover blanket. If you had empty pockets and you like let the pockets hang out, that was a Hoover flag. I'm trying to think what else. There were some other funny ones. The shanty town is a newspaper. Empty pockets. I want you guys to try to think of why people thought that about him. Sabrina just asked a good question. Sabrina just asked, what were some of the things that Harding and Coolidge did to deregulate stuff? Well, some of the stuff they did to deregulate things, some of that stuff that they did, they tried to, they practiced, first of all, when I say deregulate, they took some restrictions off of removed from businesses. Not all the restrictions, but the ones they felt were quote unquote excessive, they remove. And then you kind of have that coupled with the practice of isolationism. All of this was part of like the return to return to normalcy, return to how we were prior to World War I. So all of this, but I want you guys to think, why did they call them Hoovervilles, Hoover blankets, Hoover flags? What did Hoover do that made people blame this on him? Blame their situations on him? Because we have the 1929 crash of the stock market. Ooh, yeah, Sabrina, good call. So we got two of them. Josh and Sabrina both said great things. One of the things was, in order to try to like fix the things, he tries to it's a big mood what he does. He thinks that he's going to fix things by promoting American business. How do we promote American business? Well, you promote American business by bypassing tariffs, because if goods from other places are more expensive, people will buy goods from the United States. What a great idea. So he decides he's going to pass the Holly Smoot tariff. However, when he does this, because we are, a global economy, because he does this, he actually spreads our Great Depression goes to the rest of the world. So now not only is the United States in a Great Depression, but now the rest of the world is also struggling. It's a whole thing. The second thing is that he fails to take action. In fact, he believed at this time that you guys, if you're in PS, if you're in my class right now, you should absolutely remember what the joke that I told 97 times, and it wasn't funny any of the times I told it, but I kept saying it because I just liked what it said. He did fail to take action because what did he believe that people should do? What did he believe that people should do? I'll give you guys a minute to think about this. What did he believe that people should do? One of the things he believed people should volunteer. We should have volunteers. We should have churches and stuff take up volunteer, help your neighbors, guys. Rugged Americanism. Very good, very good. He believed in a theory referred to as, it's called rugged Americanism, but I called it something else because this is actually a very like common thing that people will say today. You hear it all the time. It's called the bootstrap theory. And so he tells people, hey, everybody, what you need to do is just lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. And the joke was, hey, Hoover, we don't even have shoes. And so in that case, in a very like annoyed face, America is really annoyed with Hoover. Um, Mostly because he's telling everybody, guys, the thing is, just like help each other, volunteer, because he believes, and it wasn't that he was just this hateful, awful person, but he really believed that the economy would correct itself. But it doesn't. And he passes the Holly Smoot tariff, and just everything gets bad very quickly. And by the time he starts passing the social programs that he does, because if you'll remember, Hoover is actually seen as fairly progressive, especially for a Republican. He was seen as fairly progressive, and but he just didn't act soon enough, and people wanted something different. And when our next president campaigned, he told people, he said, hey guys, you know what? I have a new deal for you. The American people need a new deal. And so we got with FDR, who is a Democrat, we got FDR and his New Deal. Now, can you guys tell me what was the New Deal essentially? Summarize the New Deal for me. Like Miss Puckett, I'm still copying all the things you wrote, and you just moved the paper. So now I had to pause the live stream so I could figure out all the things. I did write a D above FDR's name because he's a Democrat. Okay, so the New Deal was about relief, recovery, and reform. Essentially, the New Deal was a series of programs to help America recover, help America. It was kind of like our reaction to the Great Depression. How are we going to fix things? So it was a series of programs to relieve, recover, and reform the American economy. There were so many programs. In fact, we called them the alphabet soup programs. So a relief program was to help immediately. That's the word immediate. So there's that. Then we had recovery, which was long term help, and then reform was so that this didn't happen ever again. Never again. Never again will we go through a Great Depression. And so we had the different programs. The different programs are things such as, oh geez. Okay. So the alphabet soup programs. You have the WPA, which is, okay, so there's the PWA, the Public Works Association. Public Works Association sets up, because this is confusing. Public Works Association like builds buildings, and they're the ones who like build different, what do they build? They build like a lot of government buildings. The WPA, they are the artists who, they go around America, they take pictures, they write guidebooks, they do murals, they do all of these things, beautification projects, things of that nature. We have the Tennessee Valley Authority to help with the Tennessee River Valley issues. We have the CCC, like the Civilian something Corps, which is for young men, young unmarried men, and it was like so they could travel and what was it? They could travel and find work. Like that was kind of the goal of it. There's tons and tons of programs. We have the SEC, the Security and Exchanges Commission. These are the people that when a company, these are the people who make sure that the stock market is functioning appropriately. Like they make sure that people aren't participating in insider trading. They make sure that businesses aren't lying about how much they're worth. Things like that. That's the Security Exchange Commission. The FDIC is insurance for bank companies, so that like the federal government has money to not to bail out the banks, but there is funding there's a federal like reserve for banks. There's the SEC, the FDIC. We have Social Security is formed. Social Security establishes for the elderly a way to have money for the rest of your life. Like money from my paycheck, I know goes to FDIC and Social Security. Probably your paychecks too, humans. We don't. Never mind. Teachers don't pay Social Security. Thanks, Miss Berry.
TRS.
We pay into TRS, the Teacher Retirement Service.
in the state of Texas.
Oof. Oh, my battery's running low at 10%. Oh no.
Do you need a charger?
I do, but like I don't know where to plug in.
I'll save you. I'll
Yay.
save you, Miss Puckett.
Thanks. Hurry. It's gonna get bad.
Oh, okay.
It goes kind of quickly. Apparently my computer's yelling at me that I might want to plug in my PC. So oofta.
Here you go.
Any other programs that you guys are thinking about, that you have a question about, that you didn't know how it worked or things? Thanks, friend. Things and stuff that are things.
We save it?
Yes. Saved. So those are just like all the different programs. Now here's what was the problem with the programs though. Because these programs, several of them are getting, first of all, are we making the government bigger or smaller? This is, we're still on the New Deal down here. The New Deal for the American people. The government is getting bigger. So the government is getting a lot bigger. And we're changing kind of the role of the government. Because never before have we experienced anything like this. Never before have we had America seen anything like this. The role is getting larger, and we're consistent. We have all these programs. There's also different like agriculture programs. They were essentially paying farmers not to plant crops. So because of the Dust Bowl, because the Dust Bowl was a huge issue in the Midwest, well, in the West in general. So that was a whole thing too. So the New Deal. So the New Deal takes place, and we have people that really don't like it. In fact, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declares several of them unconstitutional. The Supreme Court is not a fan. And so they keep declaring all these programs that he's passing unconstitutional. Well, here's the thing about FDR. He is elected at a landslide. Like when he is elected in, let me see, just double check this real quick. FDR, nope. Election 1932. In 1932, he wins by a whole lot. Only 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 states that don't vote for him. 5. Everybody else is on board. The next election, in the 1936 election, only 2 states don't vote for him. So he is feeling pretty good. In fact, at this time, both the Senate and the House of Representatives are run by Democrats. So how does FDR feel about the world and everything? Popular. He is popular. Everyone thinks he's great. And also, if you know what that song was from, all the points go to you. Not all of them. That's a lie. You'll get a brownie point, but it's a proverbial. Yeah, because knowing that song is kind of basic. But it's like it's fine. Humans, I'm waiting for you to respond. It is from Wicked. Thank you, Josh. FDR feels really good about his role, and he feels like, you know what? Zoe, hello. Zoe, I like that this is the first I'm hearing from you. It makes me happy.
Can you see them or can I just see?
I can see they're in a chat.
Oh.
Okay, so FDR is very popular. He is flying on top of the world right now. He's like, you know what? I know what the American people want. So he decides on this thing he's going to do. He decides that the problem with the Supreme Court is that they are just out of touch. They're out of touch because they're so old. So he decides that for every Supreme Court justice over the age of 70, he's going to grant them an extra judge.
he's gonna put an extra judge just kind of, to lighten their load, so they don't have to worry about, working so hard. Yikes. And so he's very popular. So he establishes something that is referred to as court packing, which is essentially where he would add, I think it's like 6 new, I want to say it's an absurd amount of new judges, and he would pick them. Well, the idea is if he picks all these judges, he is going to tip the balance in his own favor. So he thinks this is a great idea. It goes to the Senate and they're like, or it goes to the House of Representatives and they're like, no. And the Senate is like, no, this is terrible, because when he's court packing, because remember, guys, so the Supreme Court, you're there for life. It is like the most sacred, I feel like, of all the branches of government, we hold the Supreme Court to be the most sacred. It's the biggest deal. You serve for life. That is how it is set up. That is how it is run. And good old FDR over here is so popular that he thinks he can change the whole system. And people are super not a fan. A lot of the American people kind of get disillusioned with him a little bit. We have the American people are disillusioned. What else is happening? Oh my gosh, if I knew words, they'd be really helpful. The American people are disillusioned. American people his own party is disillusioned with him. People are not very impressed with him when he tries to pack the courts. And he tries to pack the courts essentially to help get all of his programs passed. And it doesn't work out too well for him. And in fact, what really helps get his programs passed is how he and Eleanor have like the New Deal Commission. I think that's what it's called. Where essentially their job is to try to unify the Democratic Party, which is filled with it's like everybody's in the Democratic Party, but there's nothing that unifies them. And so they're trying to figure out how to unify the whole party and kind of, I hate to say make everybody happy, but kind of. And Eleanor Roosevelt goes out and like really meets with the people and really gets their input, realizes what their issues are, does a lot of philanthropy. So that's a whole thing too. The New Deal Commission. Now, what's really interesting, guys, is we talk about this time, we talk about like how horrific it is. Oh gosh, I think I spelled commission wrong. I think it's a double M. Sorry, guys. John F. Kennedy, who will be the president, about within the next 20 years of this. He's elected in 1960. JFK didn't know about the Great Depression until he went to college. He didn't know that that was a thing until he studied it in college. And he was like, wait, that happened? Wait, that happened? And everyone's like, yes. And he was like, oh, I didn't know. Because his daddy was big into bootlegging, and they always had lots of money because he came from big money. So that's fun fact about JFK, not to be confused with FDR. So FDR, that happens during his presidency, and that's kind of the big thing that pushes through his presidency. The world goes to war in 1939. In 1939, we are a world at war. Okay, and I'm going to change pages because clearly this is not exactly working out. So remember, he is elected in 1932. Just to kind of remind you about FDR, he's elected in 1932, 1936, 1940, and he's actually reelected in 1944, but he dies before he can serve that term. Wah, wah. He's our only president to serve more than 2 terms, and in fact, there is a constitutional amendment put into place to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore. That we don't have presidents serve more than 2 terms. Okay, so because up until then it had just been a courtesy, because if Washington didn't serve more than 2 terms, nobody served more than 2 terms. It was a whole mood. Okay, so I'm going to move this now, and we're going to get into World War II. Any questions over what we've gone over so far? 22nd Amendment. Good job, Zoe. Look at you answering questions, doing things and stuff, other things. I think that the last time somebody answered something it had to do with the song I was singing. You know what that tells me? It tells me I should definitely sing more on these live streams, because that's why the youths watch me, because of my lovely voice and just stellar attitude as a human. Clearly, it just emanates through the screen. Things and stuff that are words. We've got the world at war. The world is at war in 1939. Now, central causes of World War II, if we were to, put them in a little acronym, which, as you know, we love to do in history, we would call it TIR. So the first cause of World War II is the Treaty of Versailles. The second one is, I can spell Versailles, but I can't spell commission. I would like that to be known, that sometimes I'm good at things and sometimes I'm the worst. Also, I really like the way it looks when my pencil or my pen is directly below the camera, and it makes my pen look really giant. It's super impressive. Okay, the E stands for the economy. All the monies. Mostly I wrote all the monies because I wanted to. It's not because you actually need that. The A stands for appeasement. And the R stands for the rise of dictators. La la la. So, Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles is basically the first thing we do within the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, when Wilson met with, I think it was like Neville Chamberlain and the French guy and the Russians. Is it the Russians? No, not the Russians, because they weren't there. They had the Bolshevik Revolution. They were doing things. They were not washing their hair, but they were busy. So we have these other people, maybe the Italians, maybe. Anyways, Treaty of Versailles, they basically all decide. Wilson goes in wanting to be really chill. Wilson had his 14 points, and really nobody's having his 14 points. They say, like, you can take your 14 points and not use any of them. It's really like Willie Wilson wants his 14 points. But the rest of the world is like, no, we must punish Germany. Essentially, like, no one takes real responsibility for the war. They're like, no, the problem is it was Germany. And they're like, actually, the start of the war was when Archduke Franz Ferdinand got shot. And they're like, no, but the Germans. And everyone's like, the real problem was the Germans. If they could just stop, everyone would be really chill with each other. Fun fact, people were not chill with each other. The second piece we have is the economy. There is a worldwide, not internet, but, or web, worldwide depression. When people don't have money, when people can't feed their families, when people can't when they have no food, when they have nothing, and they feel just demoralized. They are looking for anyone to give them hope. They are looking for anyone who will give them hope, who will give them something new to look at, who will give them someone else to blame, and will give them a way out. And that is where we see the rise of dictators. It's because people are desperate. And so we have the rise of dictators such as Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini. Okay, good mood. And then we have the practice of appeasement, which is essentially where Hitler keeps like doing things that he's not supposed to do. Like Germany keeps doing things they're not supposed to do. And they're like, hey, Hitler, you can't do that. And he's like, okay. And then he goes out and does it again. And they kind of, somebody tell me though, I want you guys to tell me, why do they keep placating him? Why do they keep saying, okay, fine, like do that, but like don't do it again? Why do they keep doing that? Why don't they just take action? Essentially, people appease him because they want to prevent war. They don't want to escalate things. Their idea is, well, if we keep appeasing him, maybe he won't. Maybe if we keep appeasing him, he won't cause problems for us. P.S. It did make me laugh. Sabrina posted, Germany's economy is improving with Hitler as their leader. It asked me if it made me approve the comment because it said Hitler.
We're a little sensitive about that.
We don't like Hitler. They didn't want. They're hesitant to start another war, mostly because World War I was so awful. The loss of life is terrible. Artists like Ernest Hemingway and Scott Fitzgerald will spend most of the rest of their life in like a drunken stupor because they're writing, but they're also wildly ill with alcoholism, largely because of their experiences in the war and how disillusioned they become with just the world. Yikes, the lost generation. So they want to prevent war. That's really why they're appeasing him. However, he doesn't find any real consequences, and like the League of Nations ends up being kind of trash and not real great. And then finally, Hitler invades Poland and the world is at war. And then again, the world is at war. Now, people wanted things from us. They wanted America to choose a side. A couple of things. Why did America not? Why did we not get involved? The second question I want you guys to answer, why did we not get involved? How did we like... How were we kind of like... What was our undercover involvement? Not like spies, but like... What were the things we did that like we weren't involved in the war and like we had plausible deniability, but like also we were in the war? Okay, very good. We felt swindled into joining the last war. Exactly. We felt like Britain pulled us into their problems. We want to be isolationists. Whoa, guys, sometimes that's a rough day. Isolationists. We felt tricked into World War I. We felt tricked into that war. Oh, guys. Oh, you know so much about this. This is making me so happy. Oh my gosh, look how many things you guys are saying. Oh, this is making me so happy. I was really worried. I was like, are they all asleep? What happened to everyone? Neutrality due to the Depression. We have our own things to take care of. That's true. We have the Neutrality Act. I don't know if I think the Neutrality Act was Wilson. I don't think that was FDR, but I could be wrong. The common people didn't want to go back to war. So here's the undercover things that we do. We did cash and carry. Cash and carry. Good times, guys. Cash and carry. Cash and carry was where, like, that was one of our programs. Cash and carry. Here's the thing, Allied forces. We will not, like, send you things with our own ships, but if, like, you want to take your ships and come, like, get things with if you want to come, like, get our things and then we'll, like, send it back to you, like, that's fine. I'm like, you can come get it yourself and we can't stop you from buying it once you get here, but just, like, know that you have to come get it and carry it back. And you have to pay, like, you have to pay us for it. We won't lend you anything, but, like, you have to pay us for it up front. We're not just going to give you things. You have to pay us and then get it yourself. We'll just, like, supply you with things. The Lend-Lease Act is different because the Lend-Lease Act, we actually, I hate to say we actually lend them things because I feel like that sounds real dumb, but give me a second. I'm trying to come up with a simplistic way of saying it. Jalen, I feel like you just, like, wrote down. Jalen wrote, can you describe the Lend-Lease Act? Yes, I can. It feels like something that, like, teachers say in class, like, can you do this? Then you've survived class and done what you're supposed to. So essentially, the Lend-Lease Act is the act that authorized the president to transfer arms or any other defense materials for which Congress had appropriated money to the government of any country whose defense the president deems vital to the defense of the United States. Britain, the Soviet Union, China, Brazil, and many other countries received weapons under this law. Essentially, if we feel like that, if by giving things to lending things to other countries will act in defense of the United States, we will help them. Yes, if the president likes them, basically you get things. The Lend-Lease Act. Will lend weapons and supplies to countries who are allied with us. But then we do something that really makes Japan mad. What do we do that makes Japan real big mad? We anger Japan. What do we do that angers Japan? Okay, and Zoe, yes, there was a Neutrality Act in 1939. In 1939, I'll add that there, 1939 Neutrality Act. There's an oil embargo. I know there's an oil embargo. Erica, there's sanctions. We refuse to give them things. Yes. So we anger Japan by we don't give them supplies. We start an oil embargo, which is vital to the way they're running. And so they get not happy with us, which leads us into America involvement starting in 1941. What is our big event that takes place? December 7th, 1941 is a day that will live in infamy. All right, Barry, what happens?
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor! Also, not as probably enthused. It was a more somber occasion than we
Okay,
just.
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
Dun, dun, dun.
Pearl Harbor takes place. Now, Pearl Harbor takes place, and essentially, do up she do. Woo! If you know what that's from, also you can comment about that. You know the song that I was just singing, and if you know the group that helped sing the song, you can also do that. Oh, Matthew, when you said Barry, what happens? I thought you were specifically asking me. Oh, Matthew, that makes me laugh so hard. Partially because I'm sure at that moment you were like, whoa, what's that? Brianna, that is the trash song from Tarzan. Way to go, fam. Anybody know the group that sings backup for that? Because also they impact your life. Called Trash in the Camp. Okay.
Who's the group? I don't know.
I'm deeply upset, Barry, about your lack of watching Movie Surfers on Disney Channel in your youth.
I knew the song, but I don't know who's the group.
Close ties to Disney.
Yeah, I'm totally lost on that.
I'd be really pumped if one of you guys went and looked it up because I think it's really important that you know this just for your, pop culture life. 1941, December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy. We have Pearl Harbor takes place. Pearl Harbor takes place, and oh no, something happened. Things are happening. Why is live down? Why are we not live? Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. There we go. Heyo. Zoe, it was NSYNC. Way to go,
Was it?
Zoe.
Oh, I'm a bad NSYNC fangirl.
That is a problematic.
That is.
Okay.
Don't tell anybody. It's our secret.
Okay, so NSYNC, yes, largely because of their close ties to Disney, because Justin Timberlake was in the Mouseketeers, the MMC. Okay. Yes, he was. So is JC. That's a good point.
Sorry, I'm shut up.
JC Chazé. Things and stuff that are things. Ooh, Zoe, I fear we have awoken a sleeping giant. I got you with the quotes, Miss Bucket. Literally, Zoe, if you're quoting the movie Pearl Harbor, that was the movie of my 8th grade year that made me real happy in life. Okay, so next up. So Pearl Harbor happens. Pearl Harbor happens. America enters the war. Okay, America enters the war. So we enter the war, and essentially lots of things happen. We're in the war because the war goes on until 1945. I'm going to attempt to do this like... I feel like I don't exactly know how to start this. Let's talk about the home front. We're going to have one for the home front. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about battles and events. So we'll talk about European theater. Then we'll talk about the Pacific theater. Then we'll talk about European theater, Pacific theater, and then the home theater. We need to talk briefly about the North Africa things. And then we're going to have, oh goodness, what's the other things? Then the treaties, conference, and trials. Shoop. Okay. So the home front. Essentially what we have with the home front, oh goodness, all the things are happening, folks. Okay, so with the home front, for starters, we struggle with one of the first problems we're going to have is Japanese internment, which happens directly after which happens directly after Pearl Harbor. We essentially oh my gosh, with words. Japanese internment, we call something not aliens. Oh my gosh, I can't even speak right now. Japanese internment, we essentially round up Japanese Americans, 2/3 of which were born in the United States. And we round them up and we put them in internment camps in very desolate areas to ensure that they aren't sending codes or messages or anything to anyone. Largely, this comes out of fear because people didn't know how to react. This was the first time that America had ever been affronted at all in our, at this point, it was over 100 and, over 150 years of existence. We've never experienced anything like this. We don't know how to react. We don't know how this got past us. It's a whole thing. And so that's what FDR does. And it kind of, I don't know if it like quells people's fears, but it definitely is not a great moment in American history. And reparations are paid starting in 1988 for the Japanese, like $20,000 to Japanese families that were interned. A lot of baseball was played at internment camps, fun fact. The Japanese did create really created like a community within their camps. As well with stores and businesses and education and schools. All right, so next up, we have Japanese internment on the home front. We also have violations of the 5th and 8th Amendment are getting violated because we are imprisoning people who we believe to be supportive of fascist governments. There's a lot of rationing of goods. We have women and minorities are working. Women and minorities are working. We have, oh goodness, with my words. Okay, Zoe and friends, we need to be sure we're staying on target, humans. Freedom of speech is also retained, or not. Freedom of speech is infringed upon. Not so much as it was in World War I, but there's definitely a lot of propaganda that goes out there about like you can't speak out against the government essentially. Yes, there's a lot of propaganda and there's a lot of limits on freedom of speech because you're deemed basically an enemy. Women and minorities go to work. We have, oh my gosh, guys, sometimes with my words, I just kind of lose them. I'm on a train and it just like disappears. It's like a wizard in my head is like, shoo, disappearo. Oh my gosh. Okay, women and let's see. We have the Navajo code talkers. We have the code talkers and the code breakers who break codes for us and essentially help us interpret messages from our enemies so we can know their plans. The European theater. When we're moving on to the European theater, this is where we have D-Day, and the big things here are D-Day, Battle of the Bulge. We have important people are Omar Bradley. We have Omar Bradley's important. We have Dwight D. Eisenhower. Omar Bradley, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Erica, Tuskegee Airmen. Yes, that's home front. Tuskegee Airmen were a troop of African Americans, African American fighter pilots. And then we have the I love that you guys are talking about this. The Zoot Suit riots, the Zoot Suit, not the Zoot Suit riots, Zoot Suit riots. Tuskegee Airmen. And we also have the Zoot Suits. Essentially, the Zoot Suit riots were as everyone else is rationing by wearing a Zoot suit, which was like a really like an oversized suit. It was deemed as unpatriotic because you were wasting fabric. It was largely focused at the Latin American community. Okay, so we have Omar Bradley, Dwight D. Eisenhower. We have George Marshall. Well, George Marshall's kind of like he's over everything. I'm gonna put him up here. I feel like there's one more person that I'm missing. We have Dwight D. Eisenhower, and we have Omar Bradley. Is there anyone else that I'm missing from this thing? Oh, the pilot who won all the medals. I'm really impressed, Griffin, that you know like Tom and Jerry. That's a big mood. Vernon Baker. Vernon Baker, though, I don't believe he was a pilot, though, Zoe. I think if I'm wrong, I think Vernon Baker was in the Navy, which was part of the Air Force, but Vernon Baker was at Pearl Harbor. Could have been the one though, Zoe. I could be wrong. I feel like I'm actually probably wrong now that you say that. Vernon Baker was the one that was like awarded the medal in 1990. He was not in the Tuskegee Airmen, but he had his extraordinary act of heroism was in Italy. Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for giving me the people. Okay. Sorry, y'all. So D-Day, otherwise known as Operation Overlord, was when we invaded France through Normandy. We told them that they were basically, we said we were going to be at Calais. We lied. We were actually at Normandy. We invade the beaches of Normandy. It's the largest amphibious invasion, basically an invasion that goes from sea to land. Within 2 weeks, we capture that part of France, and we start making our way to recapture, like to reclaim France. And Bracero program. Okay. The Bracero program is another thing that was just mentioned for the home front. The Bracero program was where we have basically we ask Mexico for workers because we don't have enough people working and we have too many jobs, which is a very interesting problem to have. Battle of the Bulge is that as we're making our way, we've taken Paris. The Allied forces have taken Paris. They've done all these things. We've moved into France. We've captured Paris, and then we get to, and we're basically taking Paris. We're taking France back. The Germans tried to invade Allied territory, and we pushed them back. And when we push them back, they stay back, and they never, for the rest of the war on the Western Front, they are on the defensive essentially. And so it's seen as a turning point on the Western Front because after that, there's a lot of pretty consistent wins on the Western Front. So Omar Bradley, we called him Omar Beaches Bradley because he was in charge of the beaches at Normandy. Dwight D. Eisenhower, D. Day. It's a good way to remember that. The Pacific Theater, now that after we have things taken care of on the Western Front, yes, that was Battle of the Bulge. We basically reclaim France, essentially. Then we go into the Pacific Theater. When we shift our focus, and actually I'm not going to talk about that yet because I think it's important we talk about North Africa first. Patton. Not Patton. Yes, Patton. I'm a liar. Patton, who is a tank commander, he's great with tanks. He leads the attack through Italy, essentially. He's in Northern Africa, and here's like Germany, and like there's like Italy, and then there's the Soviets, and over here is like France. And it really does look like Dumbo, so that's a good mood. So essentially, he leads Patton from Morocco and Algeria, leads troops up through Italy and into Germany. That's his job. We call him good old Pasta Patton. And if you want to remember, he was good with tanks. You can call him Pasta Patton because it's kind of funny. Boop. Battle of the Bulge is the one where you push Germany back. Yes. So that's Northern Africa. That's that North Africa campaign that was to reclaim Italy, which was essentially being run by Mussolini and fascists. So that was important. Once we've got Europe, we feel like largely taken care of. Because the other part of this is what I was missing. I think this is where I knew I missed something. Because not only did we have the European part or the Western Front, but on the Eastern Front, was with the Soviets, and we have Stalingrad. Essentially, I'm really wanting to draw this out. So Stalingrad is the turning point on the Eastern Front. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Was North Africa in on this, or did we just insert ourselves? Excellent question. we have island hopping. We have MacArthur. And we have Nimitz. Okay. So Battle of Midway, island hopping, MacArthur, and Nimitz. Really big things in the Pacific Theater. Also the Bataan Death March. I don't think you need to know Bataan Death March for your test, but it's a good thing to know. MacArthur is General McArmy. He is the one that has to do, he leads the army in the Pacific. Nimitz is the Navy, good old Admiral Nimitz. He leads the Navy in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway is where we essentially stop the Japanese from invading. Ooh, Aiden. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Oh no. This is kind of comical. Okay, so Battle of Midway, island hopping, MacArthur, Nimitz, Bataan Death March. Okay, so the Battle of Midway is the turning point in the Pacific Theater. That's where we really start winning. That's why you need to say that now. Island hopping is the thing where we would conquer one island and then jump to the next. Conquer one island, jump to the next. MacArthur is General MacArthur. Essentially, he is in charge of the troops in the Pacific. General McArmy is what I call him. Nimitz is the Navy. He's in charge of the Navy in the Pacific. The Bataan Death March wasn't in our notes, but it's something that happens in this area, and I want to say it's in the Teaks, but I kind of forget. Mr. Walter would know better than I would at that. But the Bataan Death March is essentially where we have a group of men, MacArthur's men, who get captured. And they're captured in the Philippines, I think, on the island. They're on Bataan. And it's in that area. And they're captured, but we can't, because of everything going on the European front, they can't send any. In the European theater, they basically don't send them help. And so the Bataan Death March was basically a march to this camp that tons of people died on, because as they were walking, if you stumbled, if you stopped to defecate, if you looked at them the wrong way, they killed you. And so the people who survived this, after we start really taking on the Pacific Theater, that's what that is. And we're able to get our men from this camp. It's a big deal. Conferences and trials. We have the Yalta Conference. Then we have Potsdam, Nuremberg, and Tokyo. Before we do that, though, Christine, why was Midway a turning point in the Pacific Theater? Because it was, Christine, because it was. It was a turning point largely because after we win at Midway, Japan doesn't keep gaining, like Japan has to go on the defensive. They are no longer able to try to continue to take things over. They have to defend the land that they have, and we keep taking it over. Excellent question. It's 8:20 and I'm still at school, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. So there's that. So we have Germany. If this is Germany, and of course, if you're one of my students, you know that obviously this is Germany. We have the Soviet Union. Then we have like France. At the time, like part of it is gently taken up by like this part prior to us coming in and was like taken over by Germany. Then we have like Spain over here. Spain. We have like the UK. This is a terrible drawing. by the way. All of this is awful. Please do not ever think that this is like, you know, real life cartography, because this is pretty much the worst. Then we can't forget, of course, we have the boot, which is Italy, essentially, in Sicily. And then down here we have Northern Africa. Am I right or am I right? Basically the best thing you've ever seen. Okay. Keep in mind, a whole lot else is happening, but like this is just where we are right now. So essentially, you have the three-pronged offensive coming in. So we're going to go in with a three-pronged attack. Wow. First of all, we're going to come in over here at Normandy. We storm the beaches of Normandy. And that is how we start making our way through France. Got you, Griffin. We make our way through France. We're able to push. We recapture Paris for them. Look at that Eiffel Tower, though. Am I right? Look at that. We recapture Paris. We can, after the Battle of Midway, we're able to push them out of France entirely, push them back into Germany. Then with Stalingrad, Germany actually gets all the way. Initially, they get all the way to Moscow, but then like winter hits and nobody, unless you are German, can survive. Unless you're Russian, can survive a Russian winter. So Stalingrad is our turning point here. D-Day. The Battle of the Bulge. Then we have the color of the countries don't matter. Aiden, this is just like me being colorful and whimsical because things. It's not a dumb question. I feel like sometimes it means something, but here's the thing. Student just asked, isn't Normandy on the northern coastline of France? The thing is, it probably is. Now that you say that, actually, it 100% is, because I'm from the UK and that's how we get there. So also, keeping me honest, Brooke, keeping me honest. But also, this is how we get through France. If someone else comes in and is like, no, it was in the south, I'll be like, everything's wrong. Anyway, so then we through from Algeria and Morocco. Then we go up through Italy. We have Patton going up through Italy. Patton leads the march up through Italy. So now we're getting Germany with the three-pronged attack, essentially. I guess I should write over here, three-pronged. So we got 1, 2, 3. And also we get through Sicily too. Because this is Patton's territory. And anybody that was, funnily enough, anybody that was captured in Northern Africa, any prisoners of war, had to go to a prisoner of war camp in Texas. Because wherever you're captured within whatever climate zone you're captured in as part of the Geneva Convention, you have to be sent back. You have to be sent to somewhere within the same climate, and Texas is in the same climate zone as Northern Africa. Hashtag geography. It's a crazy thing. Going back over here though, bringing it on back to the conferences, and thank you, Jalen, that Italy is pretty spot on. That's basically essentially what it looks like. It is a boot. To be fair, I did forget the heel of the boot, which it does have a heel. So, I mean, that's on me, but you know, we can't all be perfect every day. So Yalta happens after VE Day. Essentially, after we have victory in Europe, we're trying to figure out basically like what is the post after the war, what will everything look like? Actually, that's not true. It's not VE Day because I don't even remember. I feel like it's 1943 maybe. The Yalta Conference happens. We're trying to envision what the world after this war is going to look like. Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin all meet. They come to terms with things. FDR dies. Churchill is no longer in office. And so now we have these two new guys that come in. We got Truman coming in along with some other British guy that history remembers his name, but I don't right now. And then Stalin comes in. And originally at the Yalta Conference, Stalin agrees to allow for free elections in Poland. But then at the Potsdam Conference, he says, no, we're not going to let that happen. And because the rest of the world is now done with being at war, we essentially say we give word to Japan that unless they surrender real soon, we are going to put like a prompt end to the war, which means basically we're going to nuke them. And within the month, I believe we do it. We drop the first bomb on Hiroshima. They don't surrender. Because they don't surrender, we drop the second bomb on Nagasaki. They surrender 2 days later. Poland is free elections. After Potsdam, essentially all of Eastern Europe equal communism. So basically Truman and Stalin, not big fans of each other. And then we have the Nuremberg trials, which is to put the Nazis on trial for war crimes. The Tokyo is for the Japanese. Several are put on trial. The only one that is acquitted is their emperor, and that's largely just because we didn't want to deal with the killing of their emperor or something like that. So essentially, those are the things that happen there. I'm sure that you guys can't super read these because I can barely read this on here, so give me a second. Hopefully that helps with the focus. I like how it did absolutely nothing. Out of focus. Maybe. Okay. Y'all, it's been real, but I'm gonna peace out, Girl Scout, because it is late. I'm tired. I don't want to be at school anymore. I will stay on for 3 more minutes to answer questions you may have. Transcendentalism, Sabrina, is really just the practice of, or the idea that people transcend their culture. Not people transcend their culture, but like it has to do with like being one with nature, self-determination, things like that. Andrew Jackson, just kind of like remember kind of like the tenets of Andrew Jackson. He was big on the use of the veto. He shot down the National Bank. He works for the common man. Everything he does is for the good of the common man. If he thinks it's only going to help the wealthy, he doesn't do it. We are going to see throughout this time period, throughout like the 20s and the 30s, even with the Great Depression, because of all the inventions that are coming to pass, we're going to increase the standard of living. People do a lot of moving around looking for jobs. There are throwback questions. Look on the review sheet posted to the Google Classroom. You don't need to know a whole lot about progressivism, the Atlantic Charter. Atlantic Charter. I'll be honest with you guys. Atlantic Charter doesn't have to do with I can't remember right now. I'm a little bit dead in my brain. Social aspects of this time. Josh, you asked about that. You need to know about consumerism. People buy a lot of things on credit, which is a big deal. People buy a lot of things on credit. The consumerism, though, things are like cheaper, and there's all these pieces of that. The practice of eugenics in the 20s, and then in the Nazis practiced eugenics, which is essentially trying to create like the perfect race. That's another social aspect. And largely as like America works towards in the New Deal, as we're trying to like rebuild America and do all these great things, we also find ourselves doing things to help society and progress society further. It's kind of similar to the progressives, but definitely different because it's more about relief, recovery, and reform. And remember, in the Gilded Age, which is like the Gilded Age is largely like, look how great things are. Actually, they're terrible. That's mostly because we removed a lot of restrictions from the economy, and that made the economy soar, but at the same time was problematic. The election of 1800. Listen to this song on iTunes. That'll tell you pretty much what you need to know. You need to know a bit about prohibition. We didn't really talk about that. Like, prohibition is another social aspect of the 20s. Essentially, it doesn't work. It makes people just drink more when you tell them they can't have it. That's what I got, guys. I'm gonna peace out. Later, my gators. Honestly, Erica, Henry Luce, off the top of my head, I cannot remember that or the Atlantic Charter. If I were a student taking the test, those are two things that I would, because I don't know those, I would want to study those because clearly that's where my brain's at. Anyways, you guys have a great night. Thank you for everything. Thanks for watching today on Disney Channel. It's on Disney though. It doesn't look right.